Hey everyone, I'm Cecil Laird.
I'm Fuego here.
And we are back for another edition of the Horror Show News.
Yes, in our top story today, we have more news about the Preacher TV series filtering in. After premiering the initial trailer during the Halloween weekend episode of The Walking Dead, it is apparent that this series is being firmly positioned as AMC's next powerhouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah. After dwelling in developmental purgatory, not hell because it was in fact rescued, Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen have teamed with Sam Catlin behind the Breaking Bad series to bring this very controversial series to life. Starring Dominique Cooper as the incomparable Jesse Custer, the series trailer was not really giving the indication of the supernatural themes that are hiding below, and that is one of the only bits of negativity that has been coming from fans. Otherwise, with as much talent as behind this project, we are very excited to see it. But one interesting thing to note is that after the trailer premiered, there was a spike in the sales on Amazon of the original Garth Ennis written stories. So I would imagine that the popularity will only grow as we approach its debut next spring.
In our next story, the SyFy channel has recently not only acquired the rights to, but has put in a full series order of a new show called Van Helsing. And if that name rings a bell to anyone in particular, you might be thinking of Hugh Jackman and tons of CGI vampire creatures.
Kate Beckinsale.
Or Kate Beckinsale, that could be it as well. Apparently this series will focus on a Vanessa Helsing. That's right, the lead character will be a female that apparently has been resurrected 5 years into the future when, unfortunately for us, vampires have taken over the world. So Vanessa Helsing then has to figure out a way to lead the remaining humans in a rebellion to take back the world. So stay tuned for that. The production of Van Helsing begins in January of 2016, aiming for a fall 2016 premiere.
Interesting, and I must say they immediately get props from me for the Vanessa Helsing name. That's pretty cool.
Pretty clever, absolutely.
Indeed. Let's see how it holds up. And in my next story, we have another bit of anthology horror that is going to be coming our way. Cecil and myself are both big fans of that particular approach, and with the success of Tales of Halloween, most notably this past season, Mick Garris, who is behind the Showtime Masters of Horror series along with Fear itself on NBC, but who had also had such a horror pedigree of various Stephen King adaptations from The Stand to Bag of Bones, Desperation, Riding the Bullet, also Sleepwalkers, the first
Night
one.
Flyer.
Yeah.
You said Night Flyer.
Night Flyer
That's
as well.
one of my favorites.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. And he is bringing another anthology horror to the big screen along with his friend Joe Dante, who is the director of Gremlins, along with David Slade, who did Hard Candy and 30 Days of Night. There's a couple other directors on there, and I just love the approach, and I'm very excited to see some more scarific, interlocking storytelling. Entitled Nightmare Cinema, no release date has been named as of yet, but with this kind of talent behind it, I think it's going to be pretty sweet what Garris and Dante and all these guys put together. They are crafty veterans, and I'm quite excited.
Absolutely. Any sort of horror anthology being brought to life only bolsters the rest of the horror anthology possibilities that we can possibly see in the future. So, moving on to our final story in the video game subgenre of our favorite genre of horror is the developer Red Barrels has officially released the trailer, or the teaser trailer I should say, of Outlast II. And any fan of horror gaming knows about the Outlast series, as it apparently is now a series. Because Outlast 1 came out not too long ago, basically producing the story of a journalist who infiltrates a supposedly closed down insane asylum. When he gets inside, however, he finds out that it's not only not vacant, but housing some pretty terrible things going on the inside. And the great thing about the game is that it made the player basically run if anything bad happened. I do know that you got an old camcorder that had a night vision function, so anytime you're in the darkness, you pull out your night vision camera to see what it is that's been chasing you and hoping against hope that it actually leaves you alone. So Outlast 2, the teaser not revealing much unfortunately, but the developer does promise that it's going to change characters and change settings, however, maintain some of the staples of the original game that made it so great. For instance, the camcorder aspect with night vision is going to be making its fantastic return, in my opinion. So keep your eyes out for Outlast 2, supposedly coming in Q3 of 2016, you guys.
Excellent. And I'd say horror video games are pretty in vogue right now with Until Dawn and the upcoming next entry in the Doom series. So
absolutely
exciting time to be a horror video gamer too.
And obviously it's a great time to jump into our editorializing section, you guys.
Exactly.
So Jaime, what do you think about, now you had never heard about the Outlast games, and before we did this broadcast, I had to actually show you the review, the video review of the
IGN.
first Outlast.
Shout out to those guys.
Absolutely, to IGN. That's where I watch most of my reviews. So, Jaime, what did you think of what Outlast 1 appeared to be as a game?
It looked much more frightening than your typical, like, Dino Crisis, Resident Evil, like Capcom type of survival horror, because there's no weaponry. And I want to fight back in these instances as opposed to just running away, but that does, I could see how it would add to the fear factor of it all.
It does, and quite honestly, I played through all of Outlast 1, and as someone that loves the horror genre, I still struggled to get through parts of it. I made it all the way through. I have not yet played the expansion that they put out for it a few months after its release. I do intend to go back and do that and possibly do it as a Let's Play for the Horror Show channel.
Nice.
However, I haven't gotten around to it yet, and the first game took me a while because, honestly, my heart was pounding at so many parts that I had to just step away.
That's what the guy on IGN said, too. He was like, this is a genuinely scary game.
It really was. It really was. And in the best possible way. Like, you don't have to worry about resource management like the Resident Evil games. You don't have to worry about overpowering death like in the Bloodborne game. You can just go through and try and survive and run and hide and hope you don't get found. And if you do, you run and hide somewhere else. So you didn't necessarily have to die a lot in the game. You just had to hide very well. But your heart was a pounding. So I'm definitely excited to see what they can do in Outlast 2. Changing the setting and the characters, you know, I'm not against that. I'm just interested to see what they're going to do that's going to so beautifully utilize a night vision camcorder in the way that an Insane Asylum did in the first game.
It did look pretty crazy. So I'm going to jump to one of my stories then as we're editorializing here. So what are your thoughts on another anthology horror film? You know, Mr. Mick Garris, I mean, all the stuff that I mentioned, the Stephen King stuff. He also co-wrote The Fly 2. He wrote and directed the second Critters movie. I mean, the guy has done a lot of stuff.
Wow. Okay, now I'm super excited about it because you mentioned it earlier and I wasn't overly familiar with the name of the gentleman, but
Mick Garris.
Yep, you told me the things that he had done. You did not mention Critters 2 in there.
Wrote and directed.
Yep, and I
Better
love
than the first one,
Critters 2. The massive rolling ball of
the
critters
main course, that's
is
what they call
amazing.
it.
Is amazing. And I love the Night Flyer. You did mention the Night Flyer earlier, and I enjoyed that Stephen King adaptation.
And Miguel Ferrer, man, that guy's a hell of an actor, I gotta say. It's like Deep Star 6, which I think is really underrated, about a creature at the bottom of the ocean.
Any creature movie, you know I'm there.
Oh, I know, man. Deep Star 6 is great. And he's also done a few Tales from the Crypt episodes that I got done wading through recently, and boy, was that an arduous process. But Mick Garris actually did a Tales from the Crypt episode. He's got anthology horror in his blood, man. I love Masters of Horror. It was great.
Masters of Horror was amazing, and even Fear itself was worth watching. It was
Despite
done on
toned
network
down a little
TV,
bit.
yeah, so it was toned down. But definitely, the horror anthology is not dead. I mean, VHS has 3 iterations. The ABCs of Death has 2 iterations. I'm not sure, but there's probably more of both of those coming in the future.
I like the short form, just being able to have all these tasty little bites as opposed to one big meal that maybe, if you go course by course, sometimes one course is amazing and others are just okay, whereas if it's one big meal you eat simultaneously and it's not very good, I mean...
And of course, most recently for you and I, Tales of Halloween has reinvigorated our enjoyment of the horror anthology of recent years because it was a great 10-film movie that ended up surpassing expectations, in my opinion.
So you got to check out our review of that here on this channel.
Absolutely. And moving on to my other story, Jaime, now what do you think of the idea of a SyFy channel doing a Vanessa Helsing series?
Anytime the SyFy channel is doing horror, I kind of bat my eye a little bit at it, you know, with skepticism, but it could be good. The concept, so did you say that it was going to be a modern tale?
I believe so. I believe that's what they're going for.
Okay. Yeah, a distant descendant or something of, you know, the Helsing clan. I mean, I guess it could be cool. It is SyFy, so it's probably going to be more action heavy as opposed to scare heavy, but I'd say there's potential, you know?
Yeah, I think so
too. As bad
too.
as the one with Hugh Jackman. So.
No, and that's so cheesy. The schlock value of it is still somewhat enjoyable in some ways.
I didn't hate it like everybody else did. I didn't say 1 star like many. I said like 2.5.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, it was fun watching at least one time. But...
kind of along the lines of what The Last Witch Hunter looks like, and some of these other like guilty pleasure, cheesy, just PG-13 horror,
effects heavy kind of thing. Yeah, creature movies, which I'm a fan of, so that's why I'm looking forward to it.
Now we get to go into one that I'm excited to talk about. Although I must admit I didn't like what I saw very much, and it has not disproven any of my skepticism. That's the Preacher trailer. So it debuted during the Walking Dead broadcast.
Yep,
right?
There was a special 90-minute Walking Dead episode that it basically plopped right in the middle of, and
very wisely positioned, because they want this to be a hit.
Absolutely,
because it's a big gamble.
And I think it will be. Honestly, I think it will be. If for no other reason than I think the hype is going to help this show, and if they do it right, then I think they'll be able to maintain their audience. Unfortunately, this trailer did not seem to gear itself towards those of us that have read the comic and like the more supernatural aspect of the comic.
It's very religiously charged, and honestly, the trailer gave no indication of that being the case.
Well, I mean, outside of him being a preacher. Yeah.
But I mean, there are some serious heady topics, growing up religious family, both of us kind of, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, me much more so. Reformed Baptist, a subsect of a subsect, and it's crazy. But yeah, man, I gotta say, it was that was why this series really reached out to me and spoke to me the way that it did, because it was so
the comic series.
The comic series. It was so of the '90s, and the fact that it was very almost Tarantinoized is the best way I can describe it. With so ultra violent, the humor is really black, but still so poignant and hits well. But then so religiously inflammatory, and being a kid with this oppressive kind of environment that I grew up in, I just ate it up. And I'm curious just how much they're going to tone it down, especially if it's kind of non-existent in the first teaser. So
it's on AMC, so they'll tone it down, but they won't have to tone it down much. The language is not going to pass muster. They'll be able to throw in a shit or two.
It's not going to be like the Evil Dead stars, though, right?
No, definitely not. And unfortunately not. I think it would have done well on a pay cable venue to be able to pull off some of that stuff that just sort of, I guess it's not necessarily necessary for the plot, but it helps with the overall tone, Mm-hmm. That's the way Garth Ennis wrote it. That's the way it should kind of stay, in my opinion. But
yeah, I don't think The Boys could ever end up on more of a network TV type thing, like an AMC or an FX or whatever. Well, that's what they're whispering about right now. That's not a scary one, but that's still kind of I guess if this was in Fuego Tamer, that's Feo. It's an ugly series. It's where he tried to out-preacher himself. And check it out if you get the chance.
Yeah, it's fun for sure, in a very evil, sadistic kind of way if you like superhero books.
Big time.
All right, well, I think that's going to pretty much cover it for this edition of the Horror Show News. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias, Jaime and Fuego here.
And remember, until next time, stay scared. Right, what he did.